Hello, my name is Syboulette and this is a tutorial to learn how to texture objects for The Sims 4. When I started creating custom content for The Sims 4, my first item was actually a recolor. And because I had no idea how to texture in Blender, I made everything in Photoshop. Took me ages, and it worked, of course. But I thought, maybe there's a better way to do this. This tutorial will show you how to create a diffuse map using the Blender nodes or Substance Painter. And then, how to bake those created maps to give your item a more appealing aspect. For this video, I am going to use this drawer I made for the designer set. Under the video description, I have put all the files that you will need if you want to follow this tutorial with me. You will find all the Blender files and texture so you can redo all the steps by yourself. In order to texture your item, you will need it to be completely unwrapped. This is a process I am going to explain in another video, so for this time the object is already unwrapped correctly. In Blender, you will have to make sure you are in Cycles Render in this scroll menu. You will also need to have the node editor, so because I like it here, I'll click on the little clock and select Node Editor. The interface of Blender is completely up to you, so I'm going to click on the Material tab and click on plus to create a new material. Then click on New and you will see something appearing in our Node Editor window. The Blender node seems complicated at first, but it's actually quite easy when you understand the process of plugging each nodes between each other. The material output is your item. Then you will have to plug a shader. The shader defines how the light will affect your item. Is it matte, opaque, or glossy? By default, the shader will be the Diffuse BSDF, which will probably be the shader you will be using the most. It's a matte and opaque texture, like plastic, for example. If you go in render mode, you can see this is plain white at the moment. So if we want this item to be wood, we will need to plug a wood texture to this shader. If you are starting from scratch and you don't have any texture, I really recommend this website. It's called texture.com and it's completely free. You can create an account and then you have 15 downloads per day. The nice thing about this website is that most texture will have PBR material, which means you will get the normal maps and also specular, roughness, metallic and all the information you need to create the more realistic texture possible. So for the wood, we are going to look for something quite plain, like this birch veneer. You can see that only the small version is available for free, but this will be enough if you are starting to create objects for The Sims 4. So you can download the albedo, which is the diffuse map, the normal map, and also the roughness. Now back to my item, I am going to add an image texture. So I'm gonna hit Shift A and look for texture, image texture. And this is easy because they put the same color, so I am going to plug the color to the color. So for now it's pink because I didn't choose any image for now. So I click on open and we look for my texture I just downloaded. I will choose the albedo. So you can see already that the texture had been applied on the item. By default, Blender will use the UV map to apply your texture on your item. This is why the unwrapping process is very important, because if you have a texture like the wood, which has fiber, you will need your UV to have a certain orientation. As you can see, that depending on the direction, it will influence how the texture is applied. So now I am going to add some more settings so I can have more control on my texture. For example, I would like the fiber of my wood to be vertical, so I will need to change direction. I also want it smaller because this doesn't look really realistic, so I am going to need to change the scale. For that, I'm going to hit Shift A and look for mapping, and this mapping will be plugged vector to vector. This menu also needs the texture coordinate to work correctly, so hit Shift A and search for texture coordinate. Now here you can see that you will have several options. Each of them will apply the texture differently. For now, we are going to use the UV one. As you can see, we are now back to what we had. So first, to change the direction, I am going to edit the Z value to 90. Now I can see that the fiber changed the direction, and this is what I want. But I still need it to be smaller, so I will change the scale. But I will need to change the scale for all 3 values, so I will put 3. So now I think it's better because we can see we have now the knot of the wood, so it makes it look more realistic. So now if we want to bake this, we are going to add a new image texture, Shift A texture, image texture, in order to receive the baking. So I will click on New and toggle the alpha channel. 1024 is enough, and I will call it Diffuse. Then I will put the diffuse here, and this is where the baking will go. About the word baking, I'm using it a lot. You probably heard it a lot and you don't know what it means. Well, me neither. But it's just a term that is used to say that you will generate maps from the texture you created. Then I go in the Render tab, choose Diffuse Color. The sampling doesn't have to be high because the diffuse color won't use the render or the light for the baking. And I will click on Bake. Now you can see here that this is my texture I just created, following the UV map of my item. So I am going to save it, clicking Image, Save as Image, and call it Diffuse. So when I import the texture in Synth 4 Studio, you can see it works, but it looks a little boring, and it's very plain, it's very flat, and not very appealing. So now I am going to show you how to bake the texture so it looks better. So back to our item in Blender, I will now add information to make the texture look more realistic. But first, I want to make a small interlude to talk to you about a plugin I use, which is very useful when you're using Blender nodes. When you click on your shader and hit Ctrl+T, it will automatically add an image mapping and texture coordinate. It can also do this directly from an image texture, Ctrl+T, and you will have automatically texture coordinate and mapping. This will save you time. This plugin is called Node Wrangler, and I have put the download link under the video description. So back to our item. I will need to create a new image texture, and this one is for the normal map. So I will click Open and import my normal map texture. So because it's a normal map, you will need to select non-color data and then add a normal map node by hitting Shift A, Search Normal Map. Then you will plug the color with color and normal to normal, and then you can plug the vector to vector so it can change the coordinate here that you choose for your item. Then with the same operation, I will add the roughness map, hitting Shift A, Texture, Image Texture, choosing my roughness map, putting non-color data, and plugging the color with roughness and the vector with vector. To bake this texture, we are going to change the bake type to combined, which means it will include all information we just added with the map, but also the light and shadows. So before baking, we are going to set the lights. Lighting is very important in the texture process, because what does the human eye see if not light and not really colors? Because when we see an object, obviously the first thing we see is the color, but you will also get a lot of information about its texture by the way the environment reflects on it. So I am going to explain how to create an environment lighting in Blender. I strongly recommend to use environment lighting in Blender. It's also called HDRI, and it will be more smooth and realistic than using lights directly in Blender. To do that, you will need an this is a difficult word, HDRI map. I have put the one I use for most objects under the video description, and that's this one. I like this one because it's very neutral, it's very grey, it doesn't have black nor white, so it will make your texture looks very smooth. So if you want to experiment more, you can download more HDRI maps on this website, which is HDRI Heaven. All maps are completely free because they are supported by Patreon. So if you want to set up an HDRI environment, you will need to click on the little Earth planet here called World. You will have Blender nodes exactly like a material, with the world output, which is basically all the backgrounds, and now we have a plain color, but we want an image to apply it. So we are going to add an environment texture. So I click Shift A, Texture, Environment Texture, and then I am going to put the color to color. Like before, it's all pink because I didn't choose an image yet. So I am going to click on Open and I will look for my HDRI. I am using the one I showed you, the one I like the most. And now you can see how the light changed for something very softer and smoother. We won't see the environment. The environment is only here to reflect its light on our item. If the image you choose is too light or too dark, you can always change the strength of the light here. So if I put 2, the light will be stronger. And I can go very bright, but I don't want my texture to look burnt. So this is too strong, for example. I think I'm gonna stay to 2. Now I want to bake the texture by adding all this information in it. I want the reflection, I want this part to look brighter, but I also want the shadow here. There is 2 ways to do that. I can either bake the Ambient Occlusion map, which is all the shadows of my items separately, and then use it with my diffuse texture on Photoshop. I will show you that after. Or I can directly bake the combined texture with all the information in one. It's usually what I do, because it will take in consideration all information that you have next to your item. So for example, if the drawers are another color, those colors will reflect on the wood just beside. For this baking, I'm going to go in the render tab. Make sure in render you have in CPU, and in sampling, the render here needs to be a high number, because if not, you will have a lot of noise. So for example, if I let render at 10 and then I choose the combined bake type, if I click on bake, it will go very fast because 10 is very low. But you can see we will have a lot of noise and this is not what we want. So instead, I recommend to put at least 500. You can go higher, but depending on your computer, this will take a lot more time to bake. So if I click bake, you can see that it takes a lot more time. Still waiting. And down. You can see more, it's more sharp, it's less noisy. So I can save this texture and call it combined. Now let's see the result in Sims 4 Studio. If I import my new texture, there's a huge difference. We can see there's a lot more information, it's more realistic, it's less flat, it's less boring. But if you think the dark is too dark, you can also bake the ambient occlusion separately so you can have more control on where the shadows are. So instead of choosing combine, you will select ambient occlusion and click bake. It will also take time, less time, but still time. And this is the result. It's all black and white because it only registers the shadows information. So I can save this as ambient occlusion, also named AO, and then in Photoshop I will open both diffuse and ambient occlusion. So I select the ambient occlusion and copy and then paste it upon my diffuse texture. In the fusion mode I can click multiply and you can see the result is almost similar than our combined texture. The only difference is that the combined texture took also the light information in consideration, while diffuse only have the shadows. But at least on this one, I have full control of the shadow strength. I can change the opacity here, for example. I will save this to show you. Or I can choose another fusion mode depending on the result you want. So I'm sorry, I don't know how to translate those, but for example, this one looks very nice. I will also save it to show you the results. In Sims 4 Studio, you can see the difference. This is the combined texture. This is the ambient occlusion with multiply at 80%, which looks a little grey and a little bit too desaturated. And this is the result with the other fusion mode in Photoshop, which looks way more better. If you do Maxis Match Creation, this is probably the best method for you, because it will look less contrasted. I use the combined texture because I like my items to look alpha and more realistic. But this one is definitely better if you want to stick with the base game style. Now let's see the result in game. On the left is the first one we made, the one with only the diffuse map. So you can see it works, but it's a little boring. The second one is the technique using combined texture. It's the one I used, and you can see how the top is lighter or there is dark inside and how the details stand out much better. The third one used the ambient occlusion map with multiply in Photoshop at 80%. You can see that it's much better than the first one because it adds more detail and depth to the texture. but it's a little grey and desaturated and probably too dark. And finally, the fourth one is probably the best if you're doing mask match. So the second one and the fourth one are probably the best choices depending on which style you aim for your item. Finally, this is my original version. This is the one I made with Substance Painter, where I could add a lot more details, as you can see in the wood here, which will give more realism and details to this item. But before jumping to Substance Painter, I want to show you in Blender how to mix material when your item has several materials in the same object, and also how to make metal. So what if I wanted my drawer to be in a different material than wood? For that, I will need to create a new material, so I will click on the Material tab and click on the little plus here. Then I will click on New and it will create a new material. To assign the new material to the part you want in your item, you will need to go in Edit mode by hitting Tab and select the part you want a different material by hitting L and selecting your drawer. Then in the Material tab, click on your new material and click Assign. You can see already that it changes the color. So for this one, we are going to put a metal material, so I can show you how to use the glossy shader. Shift A, Shader, Glossy, and then I plug the green to the green. If I go in render mode, it doesn't look really metal. Maybe if we put it darker, it will look better, but it's still not very convincing. Maybe I can lower the roughness, which will increase the reflection. It's better, but still not very convincing. Because in real life, the metal, we have some scratches and we have some areas that are more glossy than others. For that, we will go in to download a new texture from texture.com. So I think this galvanized metal is nice because it has a lot of details and it's probably best for what we are going to achieve. Back in Blender, let's plug all the texture we just downloaded. Using the Wrangler plugin I told you about earlier, I click on Glossy and hit Ctrl T and it will open automatically an image texture, a mapping node and a texture coordinate node. In the image texture that it's plugged to colors, I will put the albedo. Shift A, Texture, Image Texture, and this one I will put the roughness. The roughness needs to be non-color data. I will put the colors to roughness and then vector to vector. So if I change this information about the coordinates of my texture, this will affect all the texture altogether. I will add a third image for the normal map, hitting Shift A, Image Texture, and then Shift A, search for normal. I plug the color to color and normal to normal and the image texture vector to the vector. Remember to change color to non-color data. Now we can change the coordinates so the texture looks more like what we want, because the galvanized metal is supposed to be smaller than that. So I will try 5 instead. Now it looks much better, especially when you move around. So if you want to have a more precise, you can put more preview here. And you can see the reflection looks nicer. But to my taste, the grey is a little too dark and I want it a little more light. So I will add a color node to change its color. So hit Shift A and select Color, then RGB Curves. This one will be placed between the image texture and the glossy shader. You will have the curves line of all channels of your texture. So the first one will be the black and white, the second one will be the red, the third one is the green, and the fourth one is the blue. So if, for example, I'll change this curve to the top, it will go lighter. If I go down, it will be darker. If I select the red, it will add some red in the channels, same with the green. For this item, I only want it lighter, so I will put it probably like this. When I'm ready to bake my texture, don't forget to add an image texture to receive the baking. This will need to have the same map than the first material in order to have both materials bake on the same texture. So if my first texture used the diffuse image I created, I need to put the exact same image on the second texture. Make sure both materials have this texture active when you click on Bake, or as I said before, you will probably override one of the other textures you used. To bake a glossy texture, you will only have the combined choice if you want to have all the information like the lighting, the normal, the roughness taken in consideration. So if you want to mix the ambient occlusion techniques and the combined techniques because you have a metallic item, you will need to Photoshop your texture so it works best. You also need to know that baking glossy is more demanding for your computer, and the result won't be as sharp as for a diffuse texture. For example, you can see here, we have more noise in our metallic texture than in our diffuse texture. There are some settings you can change to improve that. So that will be in sampling, you can change clamp indirect for 0.3, and you can also change settings in light path. For example, the filter glossy you can put higher, and you can reduce the bounce of glossy. This is especially useful if you have white or black dot in your glossy texture. I don't think I have one on this texture, but sometimes while baking glossy, you will have some very random one white blank. And these are the settings you can change to solve that. You can also find alternative solutions by watching specific Blender tutorials on YouTube. Now, those are the very basic for texturing objects in Blender, but I only showed you a very small part of the infinite possibilities of what you can do with Blender. For example, it will also be possible to use the UV coordinate to generate a diffuse map according to its position or volume. It will be also possible to mix texture between each other or to overlay them like layers in Photoshop. All those techniques will be explored in further tutorial and will be more for intermediate levels. To learn to use Blender will always be useful for whatever you do, but there are other ways to do texture, and that will be with Substance Painter. It allows you to mix texture and also paint directly on the item, and it also offers a more simplistic view of your tools than in Blender. But the con about Substance Painter is that it's a paid software, so it really depends if you want or are able to pay for this program. The really nice thing about Substance Painter is that you will get with your subscription 30 points per month to buy texture on source substance. Those textures are really high quality, and they have something better than texture.com is that they are procedural. Procedural means that depending on your texture, for example, for this wood texture, I can choose the color of the wood. I can also choose the contrast between the tone. I can choose if it has a lot of knots or not. I can even choose the cut of the wood, like this crown or plane or rift, so you can make your texture very unique. The other nice thing about Substance Painter is that it has the possibility to use the ambient occlusion information directly in the program. So what we did earlier with Blender by baking ambient occlusion and diffuse map and then putting them together in Photoshop, we can do it directly in Substance Painter. For example, I made this, which already includes in the texture the ambient occlusion with a darker tone. I can also directly paint on my model and add some details like those wood thingy here that will make it look more realistic. So let's start from scratch. First, I will import my model, so I will have to export my Blender file in OBJ. So I choose the resolution to 2K, even though it won't be my final resolution, but I can keep the most details possible and then I can lower this later. I also need to choose the normal map format to OpenGL because this is the format that is read by Blender. Then I click OK. In Substance Painter, I will have here my model, and on the right I have my UV map. Here I will have all the layers and they are very similar to how Photoshop works. On the left menu, I will have all the texture that I have installed. Usually, those materials are procedural, which means you will have many settings to have control over the texture. This tab is about Smart Material. Smart Material will use information we will bake from the model to apply certain effects. So first, before using any Smart Material, you will need to bake the mesh maps. Click on Texture Set Settings and click on Bake Mesh Maps. You just need to change the resolution. I always choose 2K, and here you have the list of maps that you can bake. I always check them all, even if I won't use them, I can still decide later. And then I click on Bake Selected Texture. You can see that the computer will work and we make all the materials. In the scroll menu here, you will have all the baked mesh. We have the ambient occlusion that we made before with Blender, curvature, which will indicate where are the sharp edges, or you can even have the position, which will tell to the software where is the bottom and where is the top. When using a smart material on an object, you will see that the software will apply several layers that you can find in a folder. For example, this one has a very simple metallic base, and then they added a paint layer, And you can already see that here they use the curvature map to remove some paint at some center space. Then they added some roughness, so you can see here that we have a little bit of details in the roughness of this item. And then there is a dirt layer, so now it feels very dirty. When you are starting with Substance Painter, it's always interesting to use the already made smart material, because by studying them and studying what layer they put inside, this is how you are going to learn how they actually created it. And then one day, you'll be able to make your own. For example, if I wanted to use this one, but I think the dirt is just too much, I will just go on the dirt layer and I click on this square, which will be the mask. Here, you can see that they are using two filters. The first one is a mask, and if I change this setting, I can already see that I can affect the layer. Remember that if you want to use smart material, you will need to bake the model maps before. If you don't do it, you will have a very weird result and not at all what you want. By baking them, you will automatically see the results of the effect intended. Then, you will have a third menu with the smart mask. How do they work? You will need a base texture, like this wood texture, and then you will need another layer upon it. It can be color or another texture. And by drag this smart mask to my second texture, it will remove the effect from the color you choose. Like the smart material before, you will have those filters where you can change the settings and adjust the effect to how you want. Then you will have the filter tab. This is exactly like Photoshop. So for example, if I use the hue saturation on the cedar wood and then I decrease the saturation, I will be able to put my texture to gray. Then the brushes will allow you to draw directly on your model. So you will need a paint layer. For example, if I click on this brush and then choose the base color to be all red, then I can paint directly on my model. I can also have some already drawn shapes, like this screw, when I will be able to add some details on my model. Again, the nice thing about Substance Painter is that it not only adds the shape to the diffuse texture, it will also update the normal map and the roughness map with the detail we just added. So it edits all the maps we will be able to export after. Then the alpha menu, it's kind of the same of the brush, but it will act as a mask instead. So for example, I can create a new fill layer and then I will create a black mask. And then I will use this alpha brush to paint on my item. So back to my drawer, we can see that we have also options about how the texture will be applied to our item. By default, it will use the UV like we did for Blender, but we will also have other options, and the one I like to use, which is the triplanar projection. This projection type will use a 3D environment instead of a 2D like the UV map. For example, for this item, I have the seam in the middle of the mesh. So if I choose triplanar projection, then it will blend better. So for this item, I will keep UV projection. I can also change the scale and rotation like we did in Blender. And now I'm going to show you how I made the original texture. So I just created this base texture. Now I will duplicate it by hitting Ctrl D, and then I will choose a darker tone. Then I will add a mask by clicking here, and to this mask I will add a generator. So I hit right click, add generator, and here I will choose dirt. Dirt will use the Ambient Occlusion and curvature to put some dirt where it's realistic dirt to be. This will add more depth to my item. But if I think this is a little bit too dirty, then I can go in the settings and I can reduce or increase so I can reach the level of dirt I want. So to show you the difference, this is without the dirt and this is with the dirt. It's very subtle, but it's what makes your item more realistic. Then I want to add the little wood details I had in the corner. Because it's basically the same wood but darker, I will once again duplicate my layer. Then I will change the color to make it darker. And then I will put a black mask. Black mask will make it disappear. Now I will add a paint layer. And here I will change the shape to a square. This one. Now I will be able to paint on my model. By zooming in and by changing the size of my brush, I will be able to draw my squares. Now if I think the squares is too dark or too gray, I can still go back to my texture and change it to something I will like better. Once I'm ready to export, I click on File, Export Texture. Then in Global Settings, I will choose the output directory, and in Default Material, I will choose which map I want to export. So usually, I will only need the base color, the roughness, the metallic, and the normal. To use just 4 textures, I am going to use Blender 2.79 to bake my texture. The reason is because it has a new shader called Principal BSDF, and we'll be able to plug all our 4 textures together. So first I am going to create an image texture, so hit Shift A, Texture, Image Texture, and here I will choose my base color texture. This one will be plugged to base color. My second texture will be the metallic. This one will be plugged to metallic. The third one will be the roughness, so I plug to roughness. And finally, the fourth one will be the normal map. Don't forget to add a normal map node. Plug color to color and normal to normal. It's also very important to remember to always put non-color data for metallic, roughness and normal. You can see the result in render mode, and as before, the result will be better if you have an HDRI environment map. Like we did before, make sure you click on the image texture to receive the baking and then go in the render tab. All this information will be the same that what we saw before. So click Combine, put Render at least 500 and then click on Bake. It's your choice if you want to use Substance Painter or Blender. Everything you do in SP, you can do it in Blender. It might just take you more time to do it in Blender because you will need to plug more nodes, but the result will be exactly the same. Both software will take time and try to experiment and understand everything. I still haven't myself explored all the possibilities with both. There is a 30-day trial for Substance Painter, but if you intend to purchase the license, I really recommend to wait for sale. This is the end of this tutorial. I hope you understood everything, but if you have any question, please ask in the comments, or you can join the Discord channel. I have put the link under the video description. I have tried to cover all the basics about how to create texture and how to bake them to improve the look of your item. And I really hope it will help you achieve what you want. If you like this video, please subscribe as there will be more coming. Also called HDRI, you will need an HD.